don't see myself. Hello to my truth and freedom-loving friends. I'm Payman Motahede, the president of Freedom Law School at freedomlawschool.org, who for over 30 years have not filed and paid any federal income taxes, and been teaching Americans like you to do the same legally and safely. In this presentation, we're going to have an interview with my most famous student, the former IRS gun-carrying special agent with the Criminal Investigation Division of the IRS, who defected from the dark side of the IRS to the side of the truth and light and freedom. This is part 2 of a 3-part series, and in the last part, Joe Banister gave his background and how he ended up working for the IRS, and he ended up how to leave the IRS because they would refuse to answer his questions about the income tax legality issues. And we just touched on him being introduced to the We the People Foundation after he spoke publicly at Freedom Law School's 1999 Freedom Rally. So with that, let's welcome again Joe Banister. Joe, thank you for being with me once again to share everybody your amazing story.
Thanks, Payman. Thanks for having me.
So could you give everybody a little bit more detail, Joe, about the We the People Foundation, a little bit more meat about how many debates you guys had, how it came about, and how that developed as, for a couple years or so, what happened there?
Sure. Thank you. So reaching way back, as a reminder, I resigned from the IRS in February of 1999, and that was after almost 5.5 years working as an IRS criminal investigator that they call a special agent. And what happened was I left on February 25th, 1999. It was actually my birthday, as well as the ratification day, alleged ratification day for the 16th Amendment. So kind of an interesting confluence of the dates there. So shortly after I resigned in February of 1999, unbeknownst to me, there was a man named Robert Schulz, or Bob Schulz as he goes by, and he was pretty famous on the East Coast in terms of holding the government accountable, primarily taxation issues, but all kinds of issues. And he would take them to court. He wasn't a lawyer, but he was very, knowledgeable about the law enough to represent himself. And so Bob also had a talk show, and he was a talk show host. I forget the name of the station, but I think it was like in New York City. It was broadcasted throughout New York City. And anyway, so Bob had this show, and he would talk about how to confront government and hold them accountable to the New York and federal constitutions. And so someone or some group of people told Bob that there was this IRS special agent that had resigned from the IRS, asking, questions and raising concerns about the federal income tax. And so Bob somehow got in touch with me and had me on his radio show. So maybe that was the spring or summer, probably the spring of 1999, March, April timeframe. And so I was on his radio show, and as Bob would typically do, he would ask his listeners or his audience, well, what should we do next? We've heard from this IRS special agent. He seems pretty credible. He's produced for us some evidence. What should we do next? And so the decision was made to have a symposium at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. And Bob, again, I've always been astounded at how Bob can put things together, organize things and organize people, and it's just astounding. Anyway, so by July of 1999, Bob and his people. There were quite a few people that helped him. I mean, he really has incredible people around him who are dedicated to getting at the truth. Anyway, he and his group of people put together a symposium in July of 1999 at the National Press Club. And as I recall, myself, attorney Larry Beecraft from Alabama, Bill Benson, who wrote the book, 2-volume book, The Law That Never Was, about the fraudulent ratification of the 16th Amendment, Bill Conklin, who his expertise developed around the Fifth Amendment and the waiving of your Fifth Amendment right when you give the government assigned tax returns sworn to under penalty of perjury. And there could be one or two others, a few others I don't recall because it was a very long time ago. But anyway, that was July of 1999. And C-SPAN, which was a lot more instrumental back in 1999 because the internet was still fairly new. As far as I could tell, the internet kind of got started, at least began to be accessible in the early 90s. So here we're talking about, July of 1999. So the internet was still pretty new. And so our symposium was covered by C-SPAN. And C-SPAN is, watched by Congress, the judiciary, is pretty widely viewed in the D.C. Beltway area. So the symposium was carried on C-SPAN, and apparently it really got people's attention. So anyway, I'll take a breath, but I mean, that's what I recall about the first symposium that occurred in July of 1999.
And then I remember that Bob Schulz had invited in this symposium at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., the Commissioner of the IRS and also the head of the Department of Injustice, at least those two. He wrote to them, I think he wrote maybe heads of Congress, if I remember right, to send a representative to debate you and these 3 other individuals that you mentioned about the legality of income tax. Is that correct, Joe?
Yeah, and I'm that's a big point that I overlooked that thankfully you reminded me of. It was absolutely designed to have a debate, to actually, Beecraft, Conklin, Bill Benson, Joe Banister, bring forth the evidence that we had gathered and be able to discuss, debate. The government officials could, of course, present their position. And not that suspiciously to all of those who pay attention, they didn't show up. And I mean, I believe Bob gave them significant notice, and we went into their backyard. I mean, the National Press Club is just I think a block or two from the U.S. Treasury building. So we bent over backwards to make sure that the government officials were able to participate, but they couldn't spare a single spokesperson for our symposium.
Mm-hmm. They were so busy doing their jobs, they could not get one IRS or DOJ employee or lawyer to take just maybe one day off and come show us why we're wrong, why the people of the 50 United States have to file and pay federal income taxes. So, Joe, tell us what happened. Were there any more follow-up debates that were set up by Bob Schulz between you and other tax truth freedom experts and the government?
Many. I can't remember how many times I traveled back to D.C. Because, I was born and raised in San Jose, California, and throughout those years, prior to my, the prosecution situation, was in California. So I did travel all the way from California to Washington, D.C. across the country. I believe the next symposium we had was in November of 1999. And as I mentioned, Bob was always very calculated in his his efforts and all of our efforts. And I know, you were participating at some point, if not right there from July. You were participating as well to try to petition the government and get answers. And, together we bent over backwards, as I say, to try to get answers. And I mean, with all the tens of thousands of bureaucrats that are in Washington, D.C., and they couldn't spare a single one. But anyway, November of 1999, I think, was a follow-up symposium. Again, all of the government officials were invited. And to my knowledge, none of them showed up again. So, here we're talking November, August, September, October, November, 4 or 5 months later, after, as I said, the C-SPAN coverage of our July 1999 event caused quite a stir. It's not like we weren't noticed with our effort to get answers. And so in November of 1999, had another symposium, and government didn't show up. And we had, I can't count how many times, would gather in D.C. To just, go literally into their backyard and knock on their back door. Hey, we're here. Remember us? We're the people that you're supposed to be serving. And so eventually, and again, I won't be able to express accolades for Bob enough with the ideas that he had and the way that he followed through. But eventually, Bob came up with an idea of, again, to get the government's attention, like we really shouldn't have to work this hard to get their attention, but to fund, to buy ads in the USA Today newspaper.
Before we get to that, Joe, if I may just add a little bit before we close this chapter, everybody, I know they did at least 4 of these debates, because I did not know about the first one, and I think I missed the second one. But the third and fourth one, I went from California to Washington, D.C. to participate and support Joe Banister and Bob Schulz in his efforts. And as Joe told you, these are the people that are supposed to represent us, we the people. They work for us. They are employees, yet they feel they have no responsibility to even answer any question that are supported by a large number of American people. In fact, I remember Bob Schulz told me one time at one of these conferences that he had over 120,000 people on his email list, the We the People Foundation, for constitutional education. And back then, email was big. There was no social media. Fax was on its way out a little bit. Email was in. So that's a large number of people who are getting the news and sharing it with more people from there. So that's when a guy named Mike Bodine, which Joe remembers, part of the close people of Bob Schulz, made a proposal to Bob Schulz about USA Today. That you want to get into that for everybody, Joe?
Sure. I'm glad you've got the background, because some of that is faded from my memory. But Mike was one of the many, and a really pivotal guy in Bob's, entourage. He had a lot of knowledge about how, networking and computers work, websites. And so Mike, and a great idea man as well. And so they decided on this idea to, if we put full-page ads in the USA Today, which, again, for the younger people, we actually had to live through a period when you didn't have social media. We did have websites, but, there were still newspapers, that are printed on paper. And so a way to get attention would be to put ads, full-page ads, in the center section of a nationwide newspaper. And one of those nationwide newspapers, probably one of the few, it'd be like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, has a national edition. But the USA Today was well known for having a national edition because in hotel rooms across the country, you would have a USA Today paper put at your doorstep. So anyway, there were a number of ads that were created by the We the People Foundation, Bob Schulz's foundation. And those ads were published in the USA Today over a series of months, if not years. And one of the ads, I know at least one, I was featured in along with two other former IRS agents. It was Sherry Peel Jackson, who was a revenue agent with the IRS Examination Division, and John Turner, who was a revenue officer with the IRS Collection Division.
In fact, I have in front of me, and on Joe Banister's website, you can download these for free. These USA Today ads, the four of them. Okay, but the first one, I remember, Joe, was in the year 2001, and Mike Bodine put up the $40,000 for the ad himself out of his life savings. That was his idea. And Bob Schulz said that was a good idea if someone we could get the money for it. And Mike Bodine said, bless his soul, he's in heaven now. He said, well, I'll do it. I'll put up the money. So because of Mike Bodine, the $40,000 back then, which was in today's money maybe $200,000, was put up to expose the government not answering our questions on USA Today. And then the next year, because of what Mike Bodine did, Bob Schulz was able to raise more money for more people to do more ads in USA Today. 3 more ads. And then the time came for the 4th ad in USA Today, and USA Today told Bob Schulz, sorry, no more ads for you. We don't want your money. Obviously, IRS and or DOJ must have contacted USA Today and told them, don't let these tax protesters get any more exposure. We can't afford to have the American sheeple wake up to realize they've been sheared. We just need to ignore them. Don't give them any publicity whatsoever. And so after that, Bob did an ad in New York Times, and then later on did another ad in American Free Press. The very first one that was done, Bob, I thought was so interesting. In a way, it was, in my opinion, the best one because it captured some of the essence of what We the People Foundation was doing with you. Joe, could you read a little bit from us on that USA Today ads? What you remember, the very first column where they, share about the remonstrance, what the remonstrance was all about, what happened there, and then how that led to some kind of an answer from the Clinton White House at the time.
Yeah, and I really kind of get chills thinking about the efforts that we all went through, and really spearheaded by Bob Schulz. I really just and bringing up Mike Bodine, paying his own money for the ads. Talk about patriots. Talk about people that really cared about their country and cared about justice. But anyway, so Bob was very, as I say, well versed with courts and law, and especially First Amendment law, and he knew about something called a remonstrance, which is basically a glorified term for a petition. And, we have a First Amendment right to petition our government for a redress of grievances. In the Declaration of Independence, of course, there were all kinds of grievances that the king wouldn't listen to. So, our founders obviously realized that we need to have something enshrined in our Constitution to make sure the government, redresses our grievances. Anyway, so this term remonstrance was used by Bob, and working with Bob was like a history lesson in and of itself. It was really fascinating. So this remonstrance had, it made certain points in it, and we delivered the remonstrance throughout the three branches of government. And I know you yourself, right? We all went to our own representative and delivered a copy of the remonstrance to our own rep. And you were in Southern California at the time, and I was in Northern California, and so we went to, our own reps and delivered them. And anyway, so the points of the remonstrance, for example, the first point was that the 16th Amendment.
If I may add, I'm sorry. Bob Schulz said, let's all drive from across America, everywhere. We drove in our cars from all over America to Washington, D.C. We met, and we all tried to deliver to our congressman our remonstrance, our petition for answers, face to face with our congressmen, House members. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the 2 or 3 people that actually got the chance to meet with my congressman. Jerry Lewis was my congressman's name. His wife liked me, so she let me in as president of Freedom Law School to talk to him. And listen, of course, don't do nothing, but that's what it was about. Just say, look, we need you to represent us with the people and answer us. Why are we giving our money to the federal government when there seems to be no lawful authority for the people to pay income tax, to the federal government? And that's what it was all about. So, and that's where now Joe's going to continue on. Please, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to not get too much into the weeds, but basically we, Bob Schulz and all of the people that, Paymon, myself, and thousands of others, as Paymon said, there were over 100,000 people on Bob's email list. And so this was a sincere, organized effort. And we, as the foundation of our sincere, organized effort, was actual evidence, such as court cases, actual federal laws, internal IRS documents. This was a well-oiled machine. We went to great lengths as citizens to do our homework and present, our best case for why we were concerned about the way the federal income tax was being administered and enforced. And so this remonstrance, was a great vehicle to summarize these issues and our concerns. And, as the First Amendment guarantees we're supposed to be able to do, we presented these concerns to our government officials who are supposed to work for us and who are supposed to answer to us and no one else. And so I guess, Paymon, you also mentioned about the experience of actually delivering the remonstrance. And so for myself, we delivered the remonstrance to all 3 branches of the federal government. And, your students and viewers are probably well aware of the 3 branches of government, but just in case someone might forget, there's the legislative, the judicial, and the executive branches, okay? And the executive branch is headed by the President of the United States. So Bob and myself and Bob's videographer went to the White House to deliver the remonstrance to President Clinton. And, I'm not that familiar with D.C., and maybe many people are, but, next to the White House is something called the Executive Office Building. And I guess it's technically considered part of the White House, but it's not the White House that, everybody sees on TV. It's the Executive Office Building that's kind of next door. But as far as I know, it's still considered part of the White House because there's a lot of administration people that work there. So that's the building that Bob and I went to deliver the remonstrance. And we met with basically Bill Clinton's chief economic advisor. And his name was, and I think the man's still alive, Jason Furman, Fuhrman. And, again, Bob, you're going to get tired of me singing Bob's accolades, but I mean, he had already prearranged and scheduled a meeting with this man who was the chief, the head of Bill Clinton's economic advisors. And so we met with him in Jason Furman's office, and we presented the remonstrance. And I think actually on my website, I've got a video, kind of grainy, but a video of our presentation. And I had a chance to speak to Mr. Furman. And, so here we are in 2000, or was that like a 2000? And I'm telling Mr. Furman, I'm basically telling President Clinton that I had not filed a tax return, and I wasn't going to be filing a tax return, not out of some kind of civil disobedience, but because I truly, sincerely found no law that required me to do so. And that was a big incentive for me to want to get answers from the government, that if somehow, I made an error in my analysis, then they could set me straight. And so to kind of cut to the chase, we left after, delivering the remonstrance to Mr. Furman at the White House. And shortly thereafter, he responded back to Bob Schulz, who continued to follow up, like, hey, what are you going to do about this? And Mr. Furman, do we actually have the quote? He said, "The legality of the income tax is not a high priority item at the White House, and we will not participate in any conference on the subject." So that was President Bill Clinton's top economic advisor. That was his conclusion to our very sincere, hand-delivered remonstrance.
Wow. Can you believe it, everybody? The audacity of the Clinton White House, the deep state, telling you straight in your face, look, whether income tax is legal or not, we don't care. We don't care at all. We're just going to take people's money, and we don't want to discuss it. Oh, I see. You sound like a thief. A thief doesn't want to discuss anything about his thievery, whether it's legal or illegal to take your property through deception or chicanery or force. They just want your money. That's a thief. That's a criminal. And of course, it explains why the White House does not want to have anybody come and discuss any conference on the subject of the application of the income tax to the people of the 50 United States. As long as they get to take your money and give it the powerful money special interest to buy off the politicians, right? They're happy. You dumb sheeple, just go back to what you're doing. Let us just shear your wool, take your money, just go back, and then you'll be just fine. Don't worry about it. Let's get out of here now, little boy. All right. So, Joe, but that led to Bob Schulz going on a hunger strike and then meeting a congressman named Congressman Roscoe Bartlett. Could you tell us about that, please?
Well, once again, Bob doesn't give up, and he's always got a plan. And he always, he seeks the comment from everyone that's working together to get answers. What should we do next? And so eventually, Bob decided that he was going to stop eating, to go on a hunger fast until we actually got a commitment for some government official to answer our questions and address our concerns about the federal income tax and all the evidence that we provided that it didn't apply to the average American. And so, again, I'm a little bit fuzzy on the dates, but I know that, the remonstrance delivery was like April of 2000. And I think sometime in 2001, Bob began his hunger fast. And I remember being one of the people that told Bob, please don't do that.
But, hunger fast to death. Is that what you mean to say?
Yes. I mean, he was committed to do it till death. And, I mean, me being a Catholic, we're all for making sure we get justice. And, but I mean, fasting yourself to death is, a little bit past the edge. But anyway, he did, and he fasted. I don't remember how many weeks that he went without food, and he stayed in Washington, D.C., and every day he would basically walk the halls of Congress and inform the congressional, the individual members of Congress what he was doing, that he had stopped eating and he wasn't going to start eating again until he would get some commitment from people that should be able to give him a commitment in a heartbeat, right? Because that's their job. And so for weeks, he went without food. And eventually, one of the congressmen that he spoke with was Congressman Roscoe Bartlett from Maryland. And one of the things that Roscoe Bartlett noticed about Bob and that Bob noticed about Roscoe was that they both had a pocket constitution that they would carry around. I believe Roscoe Bartlett carried it in his pocket. I know Bob did, but I imagine Roscoe Bartlett probably carried it in his coat pocket. And as far as I know, as far as I knew, Roscoe Bartlett was sincerely, dedicated to the Constitution. He can only do so much as one representative, but he was sincerely dedicated to the Constitution. So Roscoe would actually listen to Bob and hear Bob out and understand, the gargantuan efforts that Bob and all of us went through to try to get answers. And so what Roscoe Bartlett amazingly was able to do was to at least put some kind of pressure, or shall we say, at least get the attention of the Internal Revenue Service and the U.S. Department of Justice. And in July of 2001, Roscoe Bartlett was able to have a meeting with, the IRS and the DOJ. And as I recall, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, actually sent a guy named Dan Bryant to physically be at this meeting. The IRS, I don't think they sent anyone. They still couldn't spare a single employee to come to the meeting. But my understanding, so Dan Bryant, the DOJ guy, actually put in writing on Roscoe Bartlett's letterhead, pledging to provide DOJ attorneys to attend a taxation hearing where these issues about the income tax could actually be aired out, could be discussed, debated, and in public with the light, disinfectant light shining on it. The IRS, my understanding is the IRS agreed to appear at a hearing, but they didn't want to put it in writing. So, I mean, it just astounds me. The agency that I used to work for, they couldn't even have somebody show up in person in Roscoe Bartlett's office. The DOJ did, believe it or not. And then the IRS wouldn't put it in writing that they would show up. I mean, they demand people put in writing, figures on a tax return and swear to it under penalty of perjury by the hundreds of millions. But you couldn't get the IRS to agree in writing to show up at a hearing to discuss the income tax. Just incredible. But anyway, this was in July of 2001 that Dan Bryant from the DOJ and orally from the IRS agreed to participate in a hearing about the income tax. So the hearing, I believe, was scheduled for, I think it was scheduled for November of 2001, I believe October or November. And the agreement was reached in July of 2001. Well, most everyone, especially those of us that have some white hairs, remember what happened on September 11th, 2001. And that was the 9/11 tragedies, and the buildings coming down and the airplanes, something hitting the Pentagon. Don't think it was an airplane. But I mean, the whole 9/11 tragedy occurred on September 11th, 2001. So all of the people at the DOJ and the IRS that had agreed to come meet at this hearing that was supposed to take place backed out. And they said, well, with 9/11, and I mean, again, us older people remember what it was like when 9/11 happened, and the fervor of patriotism, understandably, but basically the entire world, it all revolved around the attacks on 9/11. People would still go to work and, kind of carry out their lives. But I mean, the whole subject matter, the whole world was talking about 9/11. And of course, wondering if there would be other attacks. And then that followed with the wars in Iraq. And anyway, so a lot of turmoil. And so the DOJ and the IRS used that turmoil to back out of the hearings that we were supposed to have on the income tax in October, November of 2001. And once the IRS and DOJ slipped out of our grasp, slipped out of their commitment, they were gone for good. They did not, we kept trying, Bob kept trying to get their attention. Hey, you made this commitment. And then they just became, impossible to reach.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing all that. I'm afraid, guys, we gotta do the rest of Joe's story next week, because after all this non-answers from government, you're going to hear next week about how the IRS tried to attack Joe to shut him up. But I want to share something with you guys. Mike Bodine put up $40,000, which is much of his life savings. He was a single guy, not a rich guy. He was just a middle-class guy, for the cause of freedom. Because he knew we have the truth on our side, but we need some money to get our truth out there. So one guy's $40,000, $200,000 back then, made a big difference. So that's why I invite you all to consider joining our Restore Freedom Plan. So as we the people, we have some funds to reach out to the American people. Okay? Because bottom line, that's what it takes. You get money to get your word out there. Even in the online world of podcasters, that makes a difference. So consider, number one, stop flying and paying income tax by following our 7-step plan, which starts with the law. Follow the law. You can do it on your own for free, the first 5 steps, but step 6 on joining Restore Freedom Plan is you being the modern-day America's founding fathers, okay? And put your money where your mouth is and be part of this winning track record we got. This time, we're going to go take it to the finish line and break down this corrupt house of order. We can do it, and that's why a Restore Freedom Plan makes sense. That you, instead of giving the money to Swamp, the DC Swamp, you keep 70% of it, the lion's share of it, and contribute 30% to Restore Freedom Plan. You get the money you need for you and your family to fight inflation, the better life that you deserve because your hard-earned money. And you choose. No one forces you to contribute 30% of that money that would have gone to the IRS, the crooks and criminals, the Restore Freedom Plan, to have America be back to freedom the way the founding fathers of America envisioned America to be, and it was that way for a long time before it changed. So if you haven't been to Joe's website, it's agentfortruth.com. Agentfortruth.com. It's USA Today ads and more. Okay, we'll be at Joe's website. Okay, we actually take care of Joe Banister's website for him to make sure all this good information on there. These videos will be on there also at Joe Banister's website. So next week, folks, we're going to go and talk about how, yes, they couldn't stop Joe, even when they came after him with an indictment and a trial. So with that, Joe, thank you for being with me. Could you stay on a little bit longer, Joe, and take some questions from people who are listening right now, maybe answer some of those questions?
Sure, Paymo.
Okay. So as usual, for those of you who are new to our Freedom Hour, every Tuesday night when we conduct a Freedom Hour, what we do is I open up the Freedom Hour to your questions about the IRS, okay, and state tax issues as well. I charge personally $1,000 an hour for my time. Not that because I want to make myself inaccessible to you guys. It's just that there's so much demand on my time, things that only I can do. Now I have to limit my time to those few who want to contribute to us, and $1,000 an hour for my one-on-one time. But I want to make myself available to all of you still every Tuesday night in these Freedom Hours, where you get to talk to me directly, get one-on-one, orally, or online, ask your questions, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. In particular, I want you to all be free of the IRS. Free of the IRS deception that makes you believe that you must be a slave. You must sign that 1044 under oath that you say, Master, I owe you this much, IRS. I swear it's true. I swear I'm entitled to all these deductions and expenses and breaks. Please accept it. And please, Master, don't audit my confession. Please leave me alone. Let me just give you a piece of my hard-earned money, which I need, my family needs. We're in debt. We get better uses for the money, but as our master, I'll give you a piece of this money. We want you to be free of that slavery, because you don't deserve to be a slave. You were meant to be a free man or woman. That was a vision of America's founding fathers when they fought that glorious revolution, a violent revolution they had to resort to have America be a union of free countries, free states. Now, much of those freedoms over the 200 plus years, we've lost. But we still have much of that skeleton still there. It's been weakened, but we have it there. We have First Amendment right to speech, assemble, associate, and publicize like we're doing right now, this way, and to petition the government for redress of our grievances to clean up the corruption out in Washington, D.C. We have a right to bear arms to, if you had to ever use it, to restore freedom, which we advocate at Freedom Law School. Don't even think about it. Let that be a last resort, because there's plenty more we can do right now without having to resorting to violence, to restoring our freedom. The right to due process of law, right to jury trial, which is so important, so much more. You're not being judged by some government judge. You're being judged by 12 regular American people. These protections in the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights are so critical to our freedoms. And unless we exercise them, unless we use them, guess what? We lose it. We lose them for not exercising our God-given rights that is recognized in the Declaration of Independence of 1776. So, we invite you to share our videos at Freedom Law School on your social media, on X, Rumble, YouTube, everywhere. Go to our website. Share it with everybody else you know. Call us, and we'll be happy to send you as many of these Restore Freedom 12-page brochures or fast track your success. Follow the law, okay? Regain your power and freedom legally and safely. Pay no income and payroll taxes with 100% guarantee if you wish. Same content, except the covers are different. They both show everybody that no law requires 99% of Americans to file and pay income and payroll taxes. 50,000 reward. Anybody can show us our legal conclusions are wrong. You put your name and phone number at the bottom part, or a private 9-digit number we'll give you. When someone joins our Restore Freedom plan, we'll give you cash or crypto for exposing the truth, the law, to your fellow Americans. Give them the opportunity not only to be free from slavery, not only have to have more money in their pocket for their family that they need, especially now in these inflationary times, but also to give them a choice. Give them the choice to be like you. Join our glorious, peaceful restoration of freedom in America. All you gotta do is call us at 813-444-4800 or go to our website, freedomlawschool.org, and request it online. Again, 813-444-4800 or to our website, freedomlawschool.org, and request either one or both of these brochures. As many as you want, we'll send it to you at no charge to you. Our supporters, Restoring Freedom Plan members, have paid for these brochures, okay? And they want to get them out to you, to be our foot soldiers. Get them out and get paid for restoring freedom by being modern-day Paul Revere's that each of you can be if you choose and get the word out. So with that, okay, we got some people with questions now. I think this locked up on me, the screen. I need you to open it up for me, please. Okay, we're going to go to your questions. Now, as usual, people, when you ask your question, I need to know a first name to call you. And number one. Number two, I need to know how you heard about us. Because to get the word out, it takes a lot of effort for us, and energy, and time. So it's helpful to us to know how you reached us. What are we doing to get the word out about the income tax scam, about freeing America? Is it because someone gave you our brochure, someone told you about us, a friend, on some particular broadcast, or some other way that you heard about us? By telling us that, that'd be very helpful to us to do what we need to do more of to get more results to reach out to the American people. And then after that, go ahead and ask your question. What I'll do is I will write down the list of the people who have questions by area code. And then once I make that list, then I'll go take your questions one at a time. So I'd like to invite you folks, please do not digress into storytelling or your personal experiences. Okay? Just bring your questions to Joe Banister and or myself, and we'll do our best to get all your questions answered as soon as we can. Okay? All right? And completely answer you. We have two callers right now. The first one is from area code 619. The second one is area code 615. Now, let's put on the screen the number to call. If you have questions, you want to be on the list to get the question answered, the number to call is 424-552-1299, and then press 1 on your telephone keypad. The number to call again is 424-552-1299, and then press 1 on your telephone keypad. Bobby, guys, let's get the screen going for the online questions also. Okay, so let's go with the area code 619 caller. Give me, please, your first name, how you heard about us, your question. Tell me if you want to ask a question of me or Joe Banister or both of us. Hold on, Jake, hold on. We got a little sound issue we got to take care of momentarily. Hold on, because I hear you with low volume. My video person is going to fix that problem to make sure that I can hear your question fully, because and I want to make sure everybody else on the line also hears it. So hang on, Jake. I don't hear you right now. I know you're talking right now, but hold on. My IT person is going to be fixing that, okay? By the way, I'll be in Los Angeles area in this Thursday and Thursday through until Monday morning. So I may be available for some of you who want to meet me in the private paid consultations in Los Angeles area. I may be available. I'm saying not guaranteeing it, but if you want to do that, I just want to mention to you, I will be there if you want to get that handled.
Well, how do I pay off my back taxes?
Fine. Okay, I can hear Jake now. So does anybody else hear him? Hopefully too, that Joe Banister hear him, and anybody else in the audience here? Jake, go to speak. Let's test out, see if the sound works. Jake, are you there? I stopped hearing.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Jake, I can hear you. Oh, did it work okay now, guys? Okay, all right, Jake. Thank you for your patience, my friend. Tell me first how you heard about us.
I heard about you guys online. I first read Joe Banister's book, and then I found Freedom Law School. Can you guys hear me okay still?
Yes. So Joe Banister's book was the first thing that got you into all this, and that lets you get into us. Very good, my friend. And what is on your mind? What's your question?
I currently owe taxes from previous years, from 2019 and 2021. During 2022, I learned about the book. I read all the content, blew my mind, stopped filing after 2022. And now currently I have a revenue officer harassing me for money. They filed a lien against me, and I've realized that I need to find a way to pay this back debt. I have filed for a CDP hearing just to delay their levy action. But I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll get an installment agreement with them. But they do not do installment agreements unless you are current on your taxes, like you're currently filing. So I don't really know what to do on how to either pay the back taxes and get current without an installment agreement. And I just don't know how to handle the CDP hearing that hasn't even been scheduled yet because the government's shut down. I don't know when it's going to be. But any thoughts on how to handle back taxes owed with the IRS? Thank you again.
You're welcome, Jake. Let me ask you a question, Jake. First of all, you heard about Joe Banister in what year?
I believe it was 2022. Someone mentioned about not filing taxes, and they heard about some IRS agent, and I'm like, I was immediately curious because I've always felt something wrong with just the whole system in general. Read his book, blew my mind, didn't understand half of it. Joe's way smarter than most of us. And then I just went down rabbit holes. And your content, Paymon, is by far the best content I've seen to explain the tax code. I've sent your videos to 100 people. And it's very well broken down, and you've done an amazing job of making it very easy to digest.
Thank you for your kind words, my friend. How much did you claim you owe the IRS for 19 and 21? How much is the balance on it right now? Because obviously you filed a 1040 income tax confession form. That's the root of the problem. How big is the problem? Tell me roughly.
It's a 7-figure problem.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't have easy answers for you, I can tell you, on this public call. Okay? But if you filed the confession form with the IRS that you owe the money, these substantial amounts, I'd like to suggest you put up a little bit for a one-on-one consultation with me to see what options may be available for your difficult situation. I'm telling you up front, it's not going to be easy because you filed the 1040 income tax confession form. You admitted to all the IRS's monies. Okay? Your options are limited. And there's no easy answer, but I can help you come up with the best alternatives that are available to you given your difficult situation.
Is there the only problem, those were great years for our business. Our business pretty much went out of business in 23. We had some real difficult times. And that's kind of where we're at in this last couple of years. I will happily do a consultation with you to figure out, but I just try to, know if there's any other option besides them just letting me until I can, because they won't give me an installment agreement.
Again, I'm glad you told me that. That is a factor. For example, in a consultation, I would ask you more of these questions like that, like how's your financial condition now versus back then, because all that dictates what we can do to minimize the damage that was done by a temporary confession form that you were deceived into filing by your CPA, by your accountant, back in 2020 and 22. I don't have an easy answer for you. If I did, I would tell you. I'll tell you right here in live. But I'm sorry, it's not easy, which is why I keep telling people, people think, oh, Paymon, you may be right about the law, but I'm going to do the safe thing and file my tax returns anyway, just because I don't want the IRS to come after me. That's a myth.
Right.
And that's a lie. It's when you sign that confession form, you literally put the rope around your neck. You confess to the IRS money,
right,
and you with the IRS. And that's what Jake got. And I don't have a clear, simple answer for you, brother. Okay, if I did, I would tell you. It's an ugly situation. But even in an ugly situation,
very much so,
there are uglier and very ugly solutions and what it could lead to. You've done the right thing by asking for collection due process hearing at this stage. Good. It's a good start. But the path forward, it won't be quite simple and easy for you, my friend. And all I can offer you, the best I can offer you, is a one-on-one private consultation in detail so I can evaluate what's going on and give you some options. Given your bad reality, which one is less bad compared to the other options that you have?
Okay, and last thing, and then I'll let the next caller come on. I even was like, well, I'll file bankruptcy. You can't file bankruptcy unless you're current on your taxes as well. And I even thought, like, well, maybe I'll just file my back taxes the last few years just to get the bankruptcy option. But I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to lie on that form. I don't want to give them anything else on me. So I literally have, a consultation I think with you would be great. But I can't even do the bankruptcy route.
Well, you may be able to, but I'm not sure. I know about what you're talking about in that the fact that they want you to file tax returns. But sometimes that may be overcome. Again, this is not a time. You cannot do a seven-figure tax problem on a free phone consultation any more than the guy call and say, I got cancer, doc. I got a heart attack. I'm going blind in one eye, and I can't hear from out the other ear. Can you on the phone, you the great doctor of the world, can you tell me how to solve it on this call for me? What would the doctor tell you?
Oh, no, I was just more curious on just any direction with the CDP hearing. That's what I was kind of just... I know it's a complicated situation, and I'm just trying to figure it out.
I don't have an easy answer for you, my friend. Here, look at those. Let's evaluate those options you mentioned and some other possibilities together. Okay?
Okay. I appreciate it. I will get a consultation scheduled with you.
You're welcome, my friend. Thanks for calling me.
Thank you.
I wish I could do more for you right here, but we're going to do what we can to minimize the damage that was done by filing those temporary confession forms in 1920 that end up telling you as you owe them over $1 million. I can see why they have an agent on you, because it's a substantial amount. Okay, we have now area code 615. Area code caller followed by air caller from area code 515. 615 area code caller, please give me your first name, how you heard about us, and your question, please.
It's Sherry. Hi, Sherry.
Sherry, how do you spell that?
How are you? Sherry.
Oh, Sherry. Okay. Very good, Sherry.
I called you last week. You had requested that I send something in to you. My daughter and I were searching for information about PMAs, and we put in PMA, Freedom Law School. She did, and she was very excited because she thought she had gotten your site, and you had requested that I send something in so that you could correct this, but it's not your site, Paymon. We were so eager because we wanted to deal with you. We've heard only great things about you, and we respect you. But I was just listening to to what they were saying through the YouTube channel, and we were very excited. And it's not your site, Paimon. I called to apologize because I couldn't send anything in to you. So please understand that we really wanted to work with you, and you don't do that. So I called tonight to apologize and wish you well, and hopefully we'll be able to work with you in the future.
Send me whatever you want, up to 10 pages, Sherry. And on the Freedom Hour, I can go over it for you and anybody else at no charge, my friends. Everybody can send the 10 pages, and make sure you call, verify we received it. Let my people know that this is for the coming Freedom Hour. They're printed out for me, put it right here in front of me. So when your turn comes, I'll go over your documentation paperwork, discuss it with you, and help you with what I can. So thank you for calling and Sherry. I'll look forward next week to have you with your paperwork in hand. Okay?
Thank you so much, Paimon. We appreciate you.
You're
Thank
welcome,
you.
Sherry. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, the number to call if you have questions is 424-552-1299. Press 1. If you have a question, 424-552-1299. Press 1 if you have a question. Joe Banister is still on the line with us. You can ask him a question, or me if you wish. I could tell these ones were directed at me. But let's go to our next caller from area code 515. Caller, please give me your first name, how you heard about us, and then your question, please.
Hi, Paimon. My name is Mark. I called in last week, and I'm calling again. I feel like I heard about you through a show, Stu. I can't think of his last name, but you were on as a guest. But I've known Joe since early 2000s, and anyway, I feel like this is a golden nugget to be able to even be on the phone with the two of you. But I guess I have, a two-part question, one for Joe and one for you, Paimon. Mm-hmm. The first question, I guess, Joe, is I'm just kind of, this whole process, I've been in several battles with the IRS myself in the past, as well as a couple states, but I'm an independent contractor. I've worked for myself, self-employed, and I've been through some battles with the feds, but on two separate occasions. But how did you mentally go through the paradigm shift from, this had to be for you a huge shock, back in the day when you went from a family that, you come from a family that served the public in terms of having the background that they have, and you having a CPA, you working with the public, then transitioning to possibly going to work for the FBI, and then in turn going to work for the IRS, and then having your mind blown and taking that trip from where where most people are, to the reality of really where the truth is. But how did you mentally handle that, and I guess how did you get your family to go along with you, to basically support you through all this process? Not just, that includes your wife, of course, but also your extended family, your folks, your brothers, sisters, siblings, etc. How did that process go for you?
Joe?
Hi. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yeah, I guess we cannot see, but we can only hear you, Joe. Joe is there. Go ahead, Joe. Continue, Joe, huh?
Well, Mark, thanks for the question. It's, I was pretty devastated. As you kind of pointed out, or as you listed how I used to be, or how I was when I got hit like a deer in the headlight. I really wasn't prepared to experience what I experienced. I would say that, my faith, I'm born and raised a Catholic, and I found that my faith was absolutely the rock that I was able to cling to. And so for sure, that was that's what steered me through, all the minefield.
Yeah.
But it was a very, very devastating kind of like, thankfully it never happened to me, but I don't know, like finding out that your spouse, has been cheating on you your whole marriage, or
right. Yeah.
your parents were bank robbers, or, just completely devastated to learn that like the whole foundation that I thought existed wasn't there. And then on top of that the agency, the media, the government, outside of the IRS and inside, would go to such lengths to, deceive the people. It just, it curled my stomach. I just felt horrible, But I basically, of course, I had lots of time to think about it, and ultimately I just came back to core values and core responsibilities, core duties. And so, one of the 10 Commandments, of course, is to not bear false witness, and that came to mind. I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution. I took it to God, and therefore that was not going to be movable, or something that was going to lose its foundation. And then the way I was raised, to, not steal from people and not help others steal from people. And then, of course, the Treasury and the IRS had a lot of guidelines for ethics and what to do in particular situations. So everything was telling me, hey, you got to speak up, as painful as it might be. So that's kind of what I did. I just stuck to the foundations and prayed a lot and asked for guidance, and just kind of let God guide me through the minefield. So that's what.
And then, how did you communicate with your family through this process? How did your folks and siblings, that some I guess were in law enforcement as well, perhaps, and how did you handle all that, or how did they handle it? Did they turn their back on you? Did they just say, "Oh, Joe's going through a period of adjustment. We'll just wait it out," or did they just agree with you, or how did they handle it?
Well, I showed my brothers. I have 3 younger brothers. I'm the oldest. I showed my brothers some of the evidence that I was, gathering. So it's not like it was just my opinion.
Sure.
My father passed away just before I went into the IRS, so I didn't get a chance to ask him what he thought. I believe that he would have absolutely supported me in speaking up, no matter what the cost. My mom thought I was going to be assassinated. She watches a lot of TV shows, and I said, "Mom, this isn't like a secret that nobody knows about. So, if they kill me, then the secret will remain a secret." So I had to kind of, set her concerns, make her concerns a little less worrisome. So, I would say my family was fairly supportive. I think they were, being in government service, I mean, they all have, pretty secure jobs and pensions, and I was basically talking that I wouldn't be having those things before too long, kind of expecting that the IRS wasn't going to, take my questions very well. So I think there's a lot of apprehension, but thankfully they didn't abandon me. My 2 sons were pretty young at the time, and that was very difficult. I had to write a letter, because kind of getting ahead of myself in terms of what I've told to the audience, but in terms of the criminal prosecution that I went through, and I was, deservedly acquitted. But that went on at a time when my sons were young, like in elementary school. And so there was a lot of difficulty, a lot of pressure on my wife, and So, I guess the thing that, in addition to my faith, the thing that I mainly kept thinking about is, like the famous the man in Tiananmen Square in China, having to stand up to tanks and our founders and all the people that, the young men and women in combat in World War II, and basically all the sacrifices that people made, and all I had to do was speak up. It just didn't. It kind of put it into perspective that Joe, you got this. You can handle this because people have sacrificed much more than you in defense of freedom.
Well, that's great. The other quick question. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. And the other question I have, Paimon, is basically has to do possibly with the previous caller's question. With the 7-figure issue. But years ago, I know that I had counseled with an attorney that was a former IRS attorney, and he actually flipped the other way. And he was the one, this was back in the 80s, that informed me that it was bankruptcy was an option if it was 3 years. I'm not an attorney, and I know you're not, but it was 3 years or longer after the filing that was an option. And of course, there's the offer and compromise. And then there was also a period where I went through for 10 years, and there's the statute of limitations situation there as well that I ended up taking advantage of. This, of course, was years ago. I had the second attorney that I had used to represent the IRS in Detroit, and he used to go after mobsters and so forth, and he went to work for a different law firm in the Midwest, but he was my attorney. But perhaps, I don't know if those still options for people that you're aware of, either bankruptcy or people that have made the mistake as I had in filing the 1040, either bankruptcy or waiting out the 10-year statute.
They're all options, but they all have pluses and minuses and costs and limitations and risks.
Right.
So it's not a black and white answer.
Right.
I could give as much as I wish I could do that. That's why I couldn't give a straight answer. And I'm aware of bankruptcy law and taxes, all the limitations, and more that you said. I'm well aware. I got the book, The Bible of the Bankruptcy Taxes by King's Bankruptcy Taxes. I have that book. I've studied it. I helped out in a case, a complex case of bankruptcy and taxes for someone against California, by the way. And so I know a lot about that topic. So, but again, it's not a quick thing you can just fix on the phone with somebody. I wish it was, but it's not.
No, I understand. Well, I really appreciate you both taking the time and doing this, and I'll jump off here, but I appreciate you very, very much, both of you. Thank you.
You're welcome, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Let's go to the next caller from Orange County, California, where I started Freedom Law School. Someone for area code was my original telephone area code. Caller, you are live. Do you still live in Orange County, California? If so, where? And give us your name and how you heard about us, please.
Yeah, Paimon, this is John in Torrance, California. I have a 714 area code. I'm a Freedom Law School member. Can you hear me okay?
John, I've known you. You don't have to call on this call because you're a Restore Freedom Time member.
No. But Paimon, I had a question that's pertinent, I think, to the situation.
Sure.
If you don't mind me asking. It's regards to Bob Schulz and years ago when I got involved with you guys, and I was going to the conferences in Orange County and heard Bob Schulz and Joe Banister speak. There was I went to a Supreme Court case that it was concluded that Bob Schulz contended that he didn't have to give up his personal information about his banking account, and the IRS or Supreme Court, I don't know whether it was the IRS or what agency, determined that he went when he went to the bank, opened up a bank account, he disclosed his personal information to a person he didn't know, so he gave up his right to privacy at that time. Am I correct on that determination? Am I reading of what that case was about, or am I incorrect about that?
No, that was the IRS summons case. It was not. That's what it
Oh,
was.
that was IRS summons.
Yeah, it was summons of the bank.
So
Yeah.
is it therefore true that the IRS can determine that they could investigate your bank account because you gave your banking information to a person you didn't know at the bank? You gave up your right to freedom or privacy based on that? That's just a long-standing question I had about that.
The Supreme Court has said that when you decide to do your financial affairs by using banks, you have given your right and your expectation of financial privacy. And that was the Miller case back in the mid-'70s. Right. Back then, you got $500 and $1,000 bills circulating, and a $1,000 bill of mid-1970s was worth over $10,000 of today's money, maybe worth $15,000. So if you want to buy a house that's worth $1.5 million, all I had to do was to pull out 100 of those bills and pay for a house cash. But deliberately in cahoots, collusion with the banks, they took out the big notes. The $100 bill is the biggest note around now. And the value of $100 is now so much less than it was back then, so you have to use banks. But that bad case law is still around. So we got to change that. We got to challenge that.
Okay, but being that the dollar's worth less, that leads to my next point, is that I think eventually you and all of us will be successful in fighting this IRS tyranny, because with social media and all of the disclosure of truth that's happening with the thanks of yourself and Joe Banister, that this is getting more and more well known. And so eventually I think the income tax will fall, but still what they have in reserve is the Federal Reserve. And they'll just keep printing money. And I think that's the biggest problem. They can cancel the income tax, but just ramp up the printing press, and we're back to fighting another battle, with the Federal Reserve issue. I think that's a kind of an umbrella issue, or a bigger issue in context. I don't know, Pam, I just...
Of course. Of course, John, no question about that. You're right about that. Federal Reserve is a bigger issue, but we cannot do anything about Federal Reserve right now. Let's take care of his smaller cousin. Income tax first.
One step at a time.
And then we'll get the Federal Reserve later on. We have more money in our pockets. We got to first stop giving our money to our enemies in the government. Now with that money, we can do something, maybe attack Federal Reserve, get rid of that scam as well.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, I think it's all starting to come out over the years, and I think you and yourself and Joe Banister and all of us are living on the right side of history. So, great. And furthermore, as I mentioned many years ago, and I still firmly believe this, there's a book written in 1947, Thomas Paine, the author of Declaration of Independence, written by Joseph Lewis in 1947. And I still advocate that through a forensic analysis, it will be determined in the future that Thomas Paine wrote the Declaration of Independence. Google and AI and everybody disagrees with me, but I think I'm firmly right on that point, and I think history will prove me right.
Well, you were kind enough to give me the copy of that book that demonstrates what you just said, and thank you for your confidence in me to give me the copy of that rare book for me to have in Freedom Law School's library, but because you're absolutely right. The true author of the Declaration of Independence, as documented in Joseph Lewis' book, is Thomas Paine. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anything else you want to say, John, before we go to our next callers?
Well, just I had the good fortune. The reason I found Freedom Law School when I got online in 2003, that's the only thing I did was research the freedom movement, and your website came up. It was because of the posted links on Paul Baumer, which I had the good fortune of knowing in my life, that it was through what was posted online and Paul Baumer that I met you. I just wanted to reiterate that.
Right.
And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, and I love you guys. I love you.
You're welcome.
Very much.
Thank you, John. Love you too, brother. Yes, Paul Baumer was a friend of us. that he challenged the California Franchise Tax Board. They did things, made things illegally, and for violation of his privacy rights. He won and collected $250,000, and in 2001, plus over $60,000 in legal fees that they had to pay him. And the crooked California legislature changed the privacy law to not let anybody else, like Paul Ballmer, sue them as he had done successfully. So you're right about that. Thank you, John, for sharing that. I appreciate that, my friend. Okay, one more chance, folks. The floor is open. If you have any questions of Joe Banister or me, you can call right now and get your question answered. The number to call is 424-552-1299, and to press 1 on your telephone keypad. Again, the number is 424-552-1299, and then press 1 on your telephone keypad. So, again, looks like there's no caller right now. So, thank you, Joe, for being with us, my friend. I appreciate you. 2 weeks from now, we'll have Joe Banister's back to do the third and probably the final part of Joe Banister's story. Okay, IRS attacking Joe Banister and Joe winning and beating the IRS. You're going to hear that exciting story, okay, how it happened, how it went down. We're going to try to cover it in one session, if not two. So with that, people, I want you to know this. I love every one of you. And I want you to live your life in freedom like God gave it to you. It meant to be your life as you want it. So I invite you to remember the way the evil works. They use deception. With deception, they make you afraid. Once you're in fear, now they control you, and they can now rob and enslave you. That's how it's done. It was done with the Corona hoax. The propaganda about Corona will end humanity. Unless we double mask, 6 feet apart, don't go to work. With all those lies, they made you afraid and got people to take the shot. A record number of people are dying right now because of the Corona jab. An article in the New American showed that more Americans have died of the COVID jab than people died in World War I, World War II, and Vietnam combined in America. That's how they did it. But the solution is just as easy. Seek the truth. Love the truth. And the truth shall set you free. I did not get the jab. My family members did not get the Corona jab. Because I took the time to educate myself and my family. And you, my friends, you can stop filing and paying income tax if you educate yourself. Go to our website, freedomlawschool.org, okay? And as you drive around town, okay, go to the 7 steps. Click on it. Put your smartphone to use in your car. Go down and take the 7 steps to free yourself from income tax slavery, okay? Just listen to the videos as you drive. When you go for lunch or dinner at home or work, then one more time, listen and watch the videos, okay? It's all there. Just take a little time. Over the course of a few weeks, I promise you, you'll be free within the course of a few weeks if you do as I suggested to you. And remember, these brochures we got for free, that's great brochures to read, our freedom brochures, as you have your lunch, breakfast, dinner. Eat and read and be free. Joe, anything you want to say to add and before you say goodbye to our caller, my friend?
No, just thanks for having me came on, and grateful to everyone that's trying to do their part to keep our country free and keep taxation honest in the country.
Thank you, Joe, for being with me. Next week, we'll have the topic of the final chapter, chapter 3, about grand juries, the key to restoring honesty in government. You have not seen the first 2 parts? Watch it in our Odyssey, Rumble, or YouTube channels, okay? And This coming Tuesday night, I'll cover how our First Amendment rights come into play, and our petition to Congress and the grand jury power could be the key, potentially, to end the income tax scam. So be sure to tune in next week. I'll be with you again at the next edition of Freedom Law School's Freedom Hour. Good night, everybody.